What's up YouTube? It's Rico here, CEO of Sourcefine Asia, co-host of the Main Channel podcast, host of the Sourcefine Asia YouTube channel, and I'm back with another one from the comment section. So in today's video, the commenter is Bali O. I believe this is the second time that he's dropped me a comment, which I really like. And like I said, guys, I will answer any questions that I think are going to provide value for the channel. I will answer them either directly or I will make a video about it. So go ahead and drop us a few more questions. This question in particular, and I'm paraphrasing here, he wants to know about selling on Chinese e-commerce platforms, and he wants to know whether having a registered Hong Kong company will help you sell on the platforms. The second part to his question was about whether you could represent existing factories with existing products on these Chinese platforms and sell on their behalf. All right, so I'm going to break that question into two parts. There's the first part and the second part, and I will answer your question shortly.
Listen. Yo. It all started as a need for catharsis, since I never saw reason for speaking speeches of sparseness. Was only cool with select few people and targets, cause I felt the average person was evil and heartless. Attitude was reticent, but raps I brewed were eloquent. I snapped into my elements, what I had to do was evident. My aptitude was prevalent, which begun my ascension to a class of my own, like the only one in detention. But I'm running from questions like, what do I expect from rapping? Maybe a benign butterfly effect, but these thoughts of lofty missions don't come often. See, I'm trying to draft new plots and spitting like a young rockin', never done rockin'.
All right, Bali O. So the first part of your question was about selling on Chinese e-commerce platforms and having a registered Hong Kong company. Does that help? The simple answer is no, it doesn't help to have a Hong Kong registered company, because Hong Kong and mainland China are basically two separate countries. Like, they have two separate governments, technically speaking. If you have a Hong Kong company, it helps you with dealing with China, helps you with the banking, things like that. And if you want to make payments into China, having a Hong Kong bank is significantly easier and cheaper than having a US bank or whatever, Canadian bank, or bank in Switzerland or whatever. Like, it's easier to deal with Hong Kong. It's right next door. The fees are lower, the transfers are faster. Those are some of the advantages. But if you want to sell on a Chinese e-commerce platform, you'd have to register a mainland China company. So let me just backtrack. Let's talk about the actual platforms that you would be working on. So these are the most common ones: JD.com, there's Taobao, and there's WeChat. So if you want to sell on WeChat was more popular a couple of years ago, but these days it's not as popular. So there's two different ways that you could sell on WeChat. You could, and I'm not an expert at this at all, this is just my experience of being in China. You could have like a formal WeChat store, right, where it's an actual official WeChat store, and they call them official accounts. Or you could just be like a dude on WeChat hitting up people, asking them to buy your shit, and them to pay you through the WeChat platform directly. The latter doesn't happen as much because a lot of people got scammed that way. So like, it would be like, hey, you create this like WeChat group or whatever, and then you have a bunch of people, and then you're like, hey, I'm selling cookies, and then like, how much are the cookies? Like $3 for a pack of 6, and people would send the money on WeChat, and that person would disappear. And so that happened quite a bit of times. So now these days people are a little bit more cautious about paying somebody for a product on WeChat unless they have an official store. To have an official store, you have to have a Chinese business license. There are ways around that. Like, you can work with other companies that will create a store for you. They'll create your actual, like, whatever your company name is, they'll make that store for you, and you're technically using their license to get registered. But there has to be some sort of Chinese business license involved. And of course, there's a risk there when you have a store that you technically don't really own. You're kind of like renting it from another company. So there's always that risk. I mean, I haven't heard any crazy horror stories. I know a few people that do that, and they seem to be okay. So with JD.com, I think you do need a Chinese business license. At the very least, I think you need a Chinese ID. But I think you do need a Chinese business license because JD.com is like more of the high-end. It's more like electronics. They have less like fake brands on there. It's all like brand name stuff, more vetted suppliers as well. And then Taobao is kind of like the wild east. Like, Taobao is, I mean, I think they're trying to formalize it more and more now because they have this negative reputation. But yeah, Taobao, you just had to you just registered and you could set up a store. Like now, I think you need at least a Chinese ID on the store, but that's easy, right? Like if you have a friend or you have an employee or business partner, you can use their ID to register on Taobao. Like my employees, some of their side hustles are selling clothes on Taobao. Like it's just like they set it up over the weekend and then they have they're drop shipping it essentially. Like they have other suppliers that they just buy the clothing from, and they kind of curate so people buy from them because they like their fashion. So Taobao is probably the easiest one. I mean, WeChat is easy because you don't have to even have a Chinese ID, but it's just people just don't buy on WeChat like they used to, unless it's an official account. But yeah, Taobao is the one where it's if you have a Chinese friend with a Chinese ID, of course, you can ask them, hey, can I use your ID to register the store? Or do you want to partner with me on the store? Or if you have an employee, same thing. At some stage, you do want to register, a Chinese business for the purposes of just obviously taxes being more legit. But the reality is there's so much stuff going on in China. There's so many companies, so much money being made from much larger stores, much larger companies, that the Chinese government is going to be way more focused on trying to get taxes from companies that are making 7, 8, 9 figures than going after somebody who's making let's say a couple $1,000s a month or $10,000 or even $50,000 a month from one of these e-commerce platforms. Yeah, to answer your question, probably do need a Chinese business license to make things easier, but that's a lot of work to get registered. So maybe you want to find somebody in China who's willing to let you use their ID to start selling on Taobao, or partner with somebody, or you could try the WeChat thing, but you're probably not going to have that much success. All right, so the second part to your question was, is it possible for somebody to represent factories on one of these e-commerce platforms and sell on their behalf? Of course it's possible. I mean, essentially trading companies do that for factories. The reason why there's so many trading companies on Alibaba is because the factories want to focus on making the products. They don't necessarily want to learn how to deal with, the client-facing stuff, how to do customer service essentially, or sales. So that's always been the partnership between trading companies. I did a video with Alan Scanlon when I was in Hong Kong. That was kind of the conversation we were having, is how because China was closed off in the past, all these trading companies popped up in Hong Kong, and they're the ones who were dealing with the sales side of things, and then the factories got to focus on the manufacturing side of things. And of course, once China opened up, these trading companies were still representing the factories. The trading companies were the first ones to go on Alibaba. And that's why you'll also find that a lot of trading companies are registered Hong Kong companies and are not necessarily registered mainland China companies. So yeah, I mean, it is possible. I guess the question is, you're probably thinking about setting up a business where you sell factories' products online for them. I always say this, I think that China is a huge market. I think that anybody that can tap into China and figure it out could be really successful. I think it's also extremely difficult. It's much better if you wanted to sell a factory's products to other people outside of China, then at least you understand that market. You're from the West, so you would understand how Western people think, or whatever country you might be located in, right? But China is just a different beast, and it's a different animal. The marketing is different, the kind of products that they're interested in is different, the way they interact with the products are different. The learning curve of trying to figure out how Chinese people interact, how Chinese people deal with e-commerce, it's just a different world. They've been buying products online for a very long time, and they are probably the most advanced when it comes to that. People buy everything online, and of course it's so convenient to do mobile payments here that it's just that you'll be competing with so many other companies as well, that I don't know if it's worth it. I think if you wanted to do something like that as your first business or your first foray into China, good luck, but you'd have to spend a lot of time learning how it works here. And I think typically it's better, if you're going to do something like that, it's you better find a local person, a Chinese person who understands Western business as well, who you can work with. Because just doing everything by yourself here, even the other aspect that I didn't even talk about yet is, even if you're able to study the Chinese market and you're willing to be here and learn how e-commerce works here and online marketing works here, you still have to approach factories and then get them to allow you to sell their products on these platforms, unless you're just going to sell them like without telling. And that is another beast in itself. Getting a Chinese company to part with money to you, then you have to build up that relationship. Like, it's so difficult. Like, I've forayed into doing business with Chinese companies here and them being my clients in some way, shape or form, and it's just like a lot of somewhat meaningless meetings and dinners and lunches, and you're providing a ton of information to them, a ton of free information to them, and then when it comes down to it and you're asking them to pay you for, you structure everything and you ask them to pay you, there's always a ton of pushback. There's always like, oh, can you make it cheaper but keep the same services? And then the reality is, like, I know this from people that have actually had Chinese investors and stuff like that, or clients here. Even if you came down on your pricing and you kept the services the same, once you start working together, they're gonna have even more expectations. So it's quite difficult, and like I said, it takes a long time. And even just to get into those doors, ideally you do need a Chinese business partner who can introduce you to these people and get you into these rooms to have these meetings. So it might even take 6 months to a year just to get one client here. Like I said, a lot of lunches, a lot of dinners, a lot of meetings where you probably won't talk about that much business. So, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that as your first foray into China. If you could do something else on a smaller scale and then try to build up to that. In the process, maybe start to make connections, start to have meetings with certain people and start to learn a little bit more about the e-commerce here, then I'd recommend you do that. All right. So I hope I answered your question effectively. Let me know if there's anything that I missed, and I will see you in the comments section. Hey guys, if you like this kind of content, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. I will see you guys next week.
Yeah, listen. It all started as a need for catharsis, since I never saw reason for speaking speeches of sparseness. Was only cool with select few people and targets, cause I felt the average